All right. Hello, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you for joining us. So, welcome to Beyond Benchmarking 201, a detailed look at the performance pathway and performance verification process for the City of San Jose's Beyond Benchmarking phase of the Energy and Water Building Performance Ordinance, or BPO for short. I'm Jenna, the Assistant Environmental Services Specialist on the BPO team at the City of San Jose. Please feel free to put your questions in the chat as we go through the presentation. We will allow time at the end for questions and answers. Next slide, please. All right, so after completing step 1 of Beyond Benchmarking Compliance, which is to determine your building's Beyond Benchmarking Compliance deadline, step 2, determining whether your building qualifies for a Beyond Benchmarking exemption, and step 3, verifying you have submitted complete and accurate benchmarking data for the previous years, you are ready to get started on the performance pathway. Step 1, 2, and 3 of Beyond Benchmarking Compliance are expanded on in the Beyond Benchmarking Compliance Guide, and were addressed in more detail in our Beyond Benchmarking 101 webinar. The recording of our first webinar is available on the Beyond Benchmarking webpage. Next slide, please. So to qualify for the performance pathway, a building must have successfully submitted 3 years of complete, accurate benchmarking data prior to its Beyond Benchmarking due date, as well as satisfying established energy and/or water efficiency standards. There is the exception for a building that is new and has been occupied for less than 5 years from its first compliance due date. To expand on the first point, having incomplete or erroneous benchmarking reports will delay or prevent your property from falling into compliance and will automatically place your building in the improvement pathway. To submit prior year's benchmarking reports or resubmit reports with corrections, please visit our main benchmarking webpage, which is linked at the end of the presentation, and there you can submit benchmarking reports for previous years. Next slide, please. All right, so now we're going to spend some more time on the different energy and water efficiency standards that can be met on the performance pathway. To qualify for the performance pathway in energy, the building has achieved 1 or more of the following standards for at least 2 of the 3 calendar years preceding its Beyond Benchmarking deadline. The first holds a current leadership in energy and environmental design, existing buildings operations and maintenance V4 certification, has received an Energy Star score of 75 or greater, has improved its Energy Star score by 15 points or more relative to its performance during the baseline year. The baseline year being 2020 for the 2023 compliance cohort, for example, has a weather normalized site energy use intensity as calculated by the Energy Star portfolio manager that is 25% below the calculated mean for that property type, or has reduced its weather normalized site energy use intensity by at least 15% relative to its performance during the baseline year. Baseline year means a covered property's first year submitting a benchmarking report, the most recent performance verification report, or verification of improvement pathway as applicable, whichever is later. So if complying with Beyond Benchmarking in 2023, then your baseline year would be 2020. And if complying for the first time in 2025, then your baseline year would be 2022. After your first year of complying with Beyond Benchmarking, your baseline year moving forward would become the last time you submitted a beyond benchmarking report. Next slide, please. To qualify for the performance pathway in water, the building has achieved one or more of the following water standards for at least 2 of the 3 calendar years preceding its beyond benchmarking deadline. Has a water use intensity that is 25% below the locally calculated mean for that property type, has reduced its water use intensity by at least 15% relative to its performance during the baseline year. And the following 2 apply only to multifamily buildings, has received a US EPA water score of 75, or has improved its US EPA water score by 15 points or more relative to its performance during the baseline year. So overall, for the first beyond benchmarking compliance cycle, buildings need to achieve a 3-year average Energy Star score of 75, or an energy use intensity / water use intensity score that is no more than 25% below the mean use type. Improvement metrics of raising the score by 15 points or 15% will be applicable in future beyond benchmarking compliance cycles and will be compared to the average benchmarking scores of the previous cycle. Newly constructed buildings less than 5 years old and buildings holding current LEED certification at the time of their beyond benchmarking due date will also qualify for the performance pathway. Please note that in order to complete the performance pathway for both energy and water, your building must meet efficiency standards for both utility types. If your building meets one standard but not the other, you may need to complete a different pathway for each utility type. If your building has achieved efficiency standards for both energy and water, you may have your benchmarking data verified by a licensed professional and submit a single performance verification report for both utilities. If your building only meets one standard, you may complete the performance pathway for the met standard, and you must complete the improvement pathway for the unmet standard. Next slide, please. So in order to complete the performance pathway, you will need to hire a licensed professional to verify that your building meets ordinance established energy and water efficiency criteria and that your benchmarking data is both accurate and complete. So who is qualified to perform this performance verification step? An individual with 2 or more years of relevant experience, specifically in verifying building benchmarking data. They also need to be eligible to work in San Jose and possess one of the following certifications: a California licensed professional engineer, a California licensed architect, a qualified auditor, a qualified retro-commissioning professional. More detailed definitions of the certifications can be found in our Beyond Benchmarking Compliance Guide, as well as in the official ordinance. Next slide, please. The San Jose's list of qualified service providers, which is a list of qualified auditors and retro-commissioning professionals, is one place you can find a qualified service provider. The service providers on this list have undergone an official request for information stating that they meet the ordinance's specified requirements for the qualifications needed to perform audits and/or retro-commissioning for compliance with the ordinance. The City of San Jose's Environmental Services Department does not endorse any service provider on the list and does not assume any liability in connection with the use of the list of the qualified service providers. Please visit the Beyond Benchmarking webpage for the most up-to-date version of the list. You can also find a qualified service provider by using the Environmental Protection Agency's Energy Star list of licensed professionals, or you can hire a professional found of your own accord. Please note that professionals selected that are not on San Jose's list of qualified service providers will need to provide the city documentation showing their qualifications and proof of possessing a valid San Jose business license prior to submitting a report on behalf of a covered building owner. Please refer to our Beyond Benchmarking Compliance Guide for tips on choosing a service provider, specifically found on page 16 of the compliance guide. All right, next slide. So in regard to completing the performance pathway, the service provider must review your building's benchmarked energy and water data and sign the performance verification report, confirming that all your benchmarking data is complete and accurate. If you're completing the performance pathway for both energy and water, you may submit them both under one performance verification report and form. All compliance forms will be located on the Beyond Benchmarking webpage and will be made available by March 1st, 2023. Next slide. So now that we have gone through the details of the performance pathway, we highly encourage you to take advantage of the many helpful resources that exist. They all live on our Beyond Benchmarking webpage. There you will find a step-by-step compliance guide, FAQs, the compliance schedule, the webinar schedule and signups, etc. We are also here to help. Please email us at benchmarking@sanjoseca.gov. You can also visit our main building performance ordinance website for additional resources on the ordinance and to submit benchmarking reports for previous years. We will be having additional webinars in February and March on the improvement pathway and the form submittal process. The webinar schedule, recordings, and signups can be found on the Beyond Benchmarking webpage. Next slide. Thank you so much for joining us as we made our way through this presentation. We are going to open the floor to questions for the remaining time.